Hello everyone, I'm David. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This week's session is something that I would like to share with you, but more than tips or more than ideas or experiences, it is more based on a discussion and a couple of questions that I would like to pose and see if you could answer to those questions. These last days since the pandemic, I'm always challenged with the idea of how the role of teachers is changing due to this blended learning and online learning and the use of new platforms. And it all came through the reading of some articles where the idea of creative destruction adapted to education is being used. So this is what I would like to discuss with you today and see if I could have your input and we could share these perspectives about the changing on teachers' roles due to the pandemic and see to what extent this is going to be forever, or if hopefully when the pandemic will be over, we will go back to a more face-to-face human interactions in lessons. Before starting this, I have to mention that the Inquiry Educators Summit for 2021 had just been launched. And in this summit, I will have the absolute pleasure to lead a session on visible thinking routines to develop inquiry-based lessons. And I really would like to invite you to register to attend this session as well as many others. In this summit, we will have extraordinary authors giving sessions and presentations and sharing tips with which I would like to advise you to attend. Guy Claxton being one of them, J. Mike Tite, another one, and many others. And amongst them, Kimberly Mitchell, who's going to lead a session on creative destruction. So I think it will be interesting. I will attend many of these sessions about visual thinking, about backwards design and backwards planning, and I think it's a very good advice for you to attend some of these sessions and mine if you wish. So let's go back to the title of this session, and just try to first of all define what the idea of creative destruction is. It is a definition that was created by an economist, Joseph Schumpeter, and it was related pretty much to the globalized world and the industrialized world, and that the effects of the industrial revolution in the economy and in the world. So basically the definition says that is the process of industrial mutation that creates a revolution in the academic structure from within, destroying old tradition, destroying old ways of doing things, but creating new approaches, creating new ways. That's why this mix, this antithesis between creative and destruction comes together. And that makes me think of the phoenix, isn't it? That bird that dies but reborns from his ashes. So that's the intention of creative destruction. So again, this is a definition that fits pretty well into the economical world. And then I was just trying to figure out how creative destruction can affect or can be adapted to education. It is probably the right time to talk about that, since the pandemic has led to the closing of schools, the collapsing of lessons, and the changing the way in which teachers teach. IB exams being cancelled for 2 years in a row, A-level exams also cancelled, and trying to have this continual innovation that leads to destruction of old ways of doing things. So I would like to invite you to think on how many times a day we deal with computers. Students deal with computers rather than leave people. How many times a day, like now, we are interacting with each other through a screen, through a platform, through an application. So this is something that we all have thought about, and it has created some kind of an analysis from our side, being what are the bad things, but the good things of these changes. So that leads me to one great book called The New School, written by Glenn Reynolds. And in this book, he says something very interesting, isn't it? He says that when the public education system was created, so more than 100 years ago in the 19th century, the idea of that educational system was to create people that fit into the economical system. By that time, the Industrial Revolution was looking at factory workers. And schools were organized and curriculums were organized in a way that it would produce what the economical system needed. So obedient and orderly factory workers. Now, the thing is that now these jobs are disappeared. If we look at the United Nations reports, the most important works nowadays did not exist 10 years ago. And that makes us think, how do we prepare our students for those professions that don't exist yet? The majority of our students, our middle school students, will probably have professions that we don't even imagine nowadays. So what do we teach? How do we teach? What is the point of going to school? Yeah, what is obvious is that the role of public education and private education now has completely changed because of this ever-changing world. So in education, what we have, and I hope you agree with me, is that we have more technological tools and then more than any time in history. And then we have great applications, Microsoft Teams, Zooms, Google Meet, Padlet. Some of you use ManageBack, some of you use Toddle, some of you use Cognity or other platforms. We use YouTube. Look, this is an example, isn't it? We're all in a YouTube channel and listening to someone who's sharing experiences and best practice, which we can or not use for our own benefit. In any case, in my class, and I don't know your class, but students are encouraged to use all this technology, all these tools to explore passions, to test ideas, to learn, to develop independent learning skills, to be more autonomous, to work in collaboration, in groups, using chats, with or without guidance, most of the time with my guidance in class, but this research process that happens at home is being done independently. So basically, my question is that could those applications at some times and tools replace teachers? Can we consider a profession being automatized? I mean, having robots and bots and platforms teaching instead of us being present. So I think that in order to answer that, we need to define what does it mean teaching and what does it mean learning, and what are the educational strategies that we have now. What is obvious to me is that teachers are now different. We're not teachers anymore in the way teaching was happening by the end even of the 20th century. We have become facilitators, guides that guide the students through their process, through their learning journey. And what we do is, instead of vomiting content and mastering the content of our lessons, we have become somebody that through the content, we focus on teaching skills, teaching processes of independent learning, teaching critical thinking, trying to see what's going on after the knowledge is there. Because long ago in the education, the knowledge was the target. The gaining of knowledge was the target. But then now, what happens with that? What happens when the students have gained that knowledge? What's next? So when they play a game, isn't it? What happens when they win the game? When they look at a video, what happens after? After you watching this video, this session, or any of the other sessions on my YouTube channel, what's next? Do you just tick a box? Yes, I saw that. Yes, I witnessed that. Now I'm done. When we finish a degree and we receive the certificate, what happens next? Do we hang the certificate on the wall and that's it, and life continues as it was? Or we take actions on what we learned. We practice things. we take risks, we think critically about it, we decide, is it useful for me, it is not, then maybe this is something that the education has become. What about if now knowledge becomes the starting point of something much more meaningful? And this is where I think our profession it's going towards. It's what's going on after the knowledge is there, after the video is being watched. So a very interesting picture, isn't it? That little a student that is locked behind the lines of a notebook, and so what about creative distractions in terms of education? These are some questions that I would like to ask you. Are we afraid or are we excited about the use of technology? And how do we measure, how do we lead, or how do we control that unlimited information that we have access to and our students have access to? Can this unlimited information innovate our jobs? Can we teach ways in which students can access that information, and can we teach them what to do with it? If knowledge is only the beginning, as we said before in the previous slide, then there must be an upside to innovation for us and for our students. So what's next then, as we were saying? What do we do with that knowledge? Does it allow this knowledge to solve problems of real life? Is it enough for our students to be knowledgeable? Are we looking for something extra, something else that cannot be taught by the simple use of technology? Can we humanize education and have education going beyond what knowledge was? Because it's obvious that knowledge can be taught through apps. It is obvious that knowledge can be gained, can be accessed through our telephones and through internet. What is it that internet cannot do? What is it? What is the space that we as educators need to fill? What is the gap that we need to fill and we can fill in order to support the students in their learning journey? How can we help the students to adapt to an ever-changing world? Definitely computers cannot, technology cannot, and online learning can only if a facilitator, a teacher is there present to guide the process. So basically the creative destruction is the creation of new roles. And this is what I would like to discuss with you. What is our role? What is the role of teachers? So redefining our role, these are lots of questions that came to my mind. Yeah. And basically, what is our role and how is it going to be redefined in this ever-changing world? What we cannot do is consider that education will stay as it was and that it has been for the last years. We need to see where is education going and how education can guide, can help, can support the students and the young people in their process of getting adapted to this world that is always changing. Are we looking to train our students for life outside of school or not? Can we consider school being a place where we teach life skills? What are those life skills? Are those life skills present, explicitly present in our curriculum or not? And if they are, then how can we then justify that some classrooms, some lessons, some schools, some educational systems are based on a factory model? Okay, what are our priorities when teaching? Is it memorizing facts and figures? Is it thinking about it? Is it reflecting on the learning? Is teaching based on academic development, on hitting some grades? Or is maybe more hitting some character traits, some character education, building aspects like empathy, like respect, like international mindedness, like open-mindedness? What are we looking at when we close our eyes? Where do we want our students to be when they're going to be 15, 16, 17, 18, 20? Yeah. Should we then focus on creative skills? Because our students will become creative workers. They will have to adapt to a world that is changing by using their creativity. So should we be developing creative skills? Should we accept for once that creative subjects like visual, performing arts, design, physical and health education are crucial and should become core subjects like all the other ones? Questions to have, and I would like, these are some of the sources that I've used, but I would really like to have your opinion and your ideas on in which way education is changing and how are we adapting to this ever-changing world? What strategies are we implementing? So again, this session was only a discussion to have. Sorry if it didn't bring any tips or any ideas, but I hope that it will lead to discussions and conversations for you to have with your colleagues, with SLT, with parents, and maybe it will lead you to reflect on what are we becoming. Thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to read your comments on the chat. Goodbye.